Good afternoon, Radiant Life Church. So glad that you could join us today. Woke up this morning. I did not have my contacts in at that moment, and I made my way out to the kitchen, and I happened to glance over out my window. I glanced over to a neighbor's home, and above the neighbor's home, I saw what appeared to be a cross. And so as I'm looking at this cross, I said, wow, maybe they put up a cross. So then I went and got my glasses on, and what I saw is that it's actually a power pole in the shape of a cross with all the power lines. And it was just, for me, it was confirmation that, yeah, I need to be talking to you today about the cross. And it was crazy because this doesn't always happen, but as I was sleeping, my message, the message that I have for you today, in the last couple of days, it began to just kind of come together. So I actually wrote this in my sleep. So the cross, I want to talk to you about the necessity of the cross. The cross is essential. That is one thing that we know today that is essential. And we've been questioning whether or not we're essential or not. I want you to hear me say that you are essential. Whether the government or whether your town says that you're essential or not, you are essential and you are a part of God's plan. But the cross is essential, and so I want to, just for a few moments today, I want to look at how do we view the cross. I think some people look at the cross, and the cross is a symbol. Again, I feel like for some people they need to hear a message on the idolatry of the cross. It's a symbol. Something horrific took place on not only this cross, but on several crosses. But what happened on the cross that I'm going to talk to you about today is an innocent man by the name of Jesus died on that cross, and he came to this world, he came to this earth to bear the burden of sin, to restore a relationship between us and God, a relationship that we actually broke in the Garden of Eden. Adam was the first representative, and through his sin came death for everybody. And Jesus is known as the second Adam. Through Jesus came life for everybody. So thank God for Jesus, for a second Adam, for a second chance. We have a God of many second chances. But how do we view the cross today? And I think some people look at the cross and they're fearful. So I want to look just for a few minutes, I want to look at the fear of the cross, which is death. Hebrews 2:14 through 15, we read, "Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity." Jesus shared in our humanity so that by his death, he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. I wonder today how many people are just held in slavery, held in bondage because of this fear of death. It's something that many of us are just very uneasy with, and we should be uneasy with it. We've never died, and so we don't really know how to speak to it. As Christ followers, we believe that there is life after death, and that's what gives us hope. So I think some people today are afraid. They're afraid to die. And as we think about COVID-19, it's one thing to get COVID-19, and we're fearful of getting COVID-19, but really the end result of that for some has been death. And so we don't like to think about death. We like to get distracted. We like to get busy. We like to push it to the side. But the truth is that someday we are all going to check out of this place. This is not our home. We get so comfortable and so secure, and we're so in love with this world and the way things were. But there's so much better. There's so much more on the other side. And when we see Jesus, we will be rewarded, and we will receive the crown of life, and we will have eternal life. That is death no more. There will be no disease. There will be no death. There will be no divorce. There will be everything good. And so no mosquitoes, which in San Diego we don't have any anyhow. So, but Hebrews 9:27 through 28 says, "Just as people are destined to die once, and after that to face judgment, so Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many. And he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him." So the first time that Jesus left heaven was to come to earth, and the second time will be, and that was to bear sin. The second time he will come, he will bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. Isaiah 40:31, love this verse. It says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." So the question that I have for you today is, what is your fear? What is your fear, and where is your hope? What is your fear, and where is your hope? For some of you, your fear might be death, and you don't need to fear death, because for a Christian to live is Christ, and to die is actually, Paul says in the book of Philippians, is actually gain. Ultimately, it was the fear of death that led to Peter's triple play. Remember when he denied Jesus 3 times? He denied that he knew Christ 3 times. That was because ultimately he was afraid to die. He made that bold statement, "I'm not afraid to die. I'll go to death with you, Jesus. I'll go to the cross. I'll go to prison, whatever it takes. I'll follow you." But we see that when the heat got turned up and he was sitting next to a campfire, which we will have tonight at 7 o'clock. I want to encourage you to join. When he was doing, sitting at this fire, he was accused of being one of Jesus' followers. And he adamantly denied that he even knew Jesus 3 times, because he saw what was happening to Jesus. He knew what was going to happen to Jesus at this point. Jesus was arrested. Jesus was being tried. And Peter was afraid. He was afraid for his life. Second thing I want to look at is the foolishness of the cross. 1 Corinthians 1:18 says, "For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing." It doesn't make sense to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, we realize that it's the power of God. Just like that power pole, the source of the power. We have power in Jesus' name. We are connected to Jesus, and we have resurrection power. The same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead is made available to you and to me today. It can live in us. That same power. So it's foolishness to some. To many, it's foolishness. But for us, we realize that the only way to get to God the Father is through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ made it possible because he became obedient even unto death on a cross. He was willing to listen to his Father. And he died on the cross. He made the ultimate sacrifice, paid the greatest price for you and for me. And because he lives, we too can live. We have that hope. So we can hope in the Lord. That's where our hope is today. Our hope isn't in the government. Our hope today is in the Lord. And some of us are living in fear, and I want to challenge us today to move over and to start living in hope. The cross is not foolishness. It's only foolishness to those who are perishing. Third thing we see is the forgiveness of the cross, the forgiveness that took place. Even in his dying moments, Jesus offered a thief on the cross forgiveness. Luke 23:43, Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be in paradise with me." So through the cross comes forgiveness. Forgiveness for you and forgiveness for me. And how we need forgiveness. Forgiveness of our sin. It says in Hebrews 9:22, in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood. And without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. There's no forgiveness. So it was only because of the cross, it was only because Jesus' obedience that we can experience forgiveness and being set right, put right into a relationship with God the Father. And then the last thing is the freedom of the cross. We've been doing this study in our church, Pilgrims Progress, taught by Pastor Will Tompkins. It's just been an incredible study. And in this study, we're going through Pilgrims Progress, which if you've not read the book, I highly recommend it to you. I read it in like 2nd or 3rd grade, and now I'm reading it as an adult. It's a great read, second only to the Bible as far as how many copies have been sold. And in this book, we were looking at this past week. Now I saw in my dream, this is from this book by John Bunyan. Now I saw in my dream that the highway up with Christian was fenced on either side with a wall, and that wall was called salvation up this way. Therefore did burdened Christian run, but not without great difficulty because of the load on his back. He ran thus till he came at a place somewhat ascending, and upon that place stood a cross, and a little below in the bottom a sepulchre. So I saw in my dream that just as Christian came up with the cross, his burden loosed. from off his shoulders and fell from off his back and began to tumble, and so continued to do till it came to the mouth of the sepulchre, where it fell in, and I saw it no more. Then was Christian glad and lightsome, and said with a merry heart, He hath given me rest by his sorrow, and life by his death. Then he stood still a while to look and wonder, for it was very surprising to him that the sight of the cross should thus ease him of his burden. And that is what the cross means. That is what the cross offers. We're offered forgiveness through Jesus Christ. We're offered a burden that we've been carrying to be lifted. We can cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. It says in 1 Peter 5:7. We read in John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Galatians 5:1, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Some of us have been burdened for far too long. And maybe through this crisis, through this experience, maybe you've been thinking about, man, I've been carrying this for a long time. And so today I want to invite you, like it says in Psalm 55:12, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. In the King James Version, it says, cast your burdens on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be moved. And so we can cast our cares upon him. We can throw our burdens down at his feet. But I also want to just add a little bit more to that. Not only do I want to be free from the burdens that I carry in my life, but I want my friends, I want my brothers and my sisters, I want you today to be free from the burden that you've been carrying, this burden of sin, this burden of fear, this burden of finances, whatever the burden may be that's just weighing you down. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary, you're tired, you're burdened, heavy laden, and he says, I will give you rest. That's a promise that Jesus gives us, not a promise that we're not going to have burdens. In fact, he promised that we would have burdens, that we would have troubles of all kinds. But he says, don't lose heart, don't throw in the towel, I've overcome the world, and I can carry this for you. So the second part of that is, not only do I want freedom from my own burdens, but I want you to have freedom. So it says in Galatians 6:2 that we need to carry each other's burdens. Do you know anybody that has a burden? Do you know anybody that's carrying a burden? How about that single mom who's just struggling paycheck to paycheck, and now she doesn't even have a job? She's a burden. Life is just so heavy for her. Could you relieve that burden? Could you help carry that burden? Because you know what we find out? We find out that when we carry each other's burdens, what we're actually doing is we are fulfilling the law of Christ. It's biblical. That's what it says in Galatians 6:2. When you carry each other's burdens, you fulfill the law of Christ. So some things to think about today. What does the cross mean to you today? Is the cross necessary? Is the cross essential? Absolutely. Is it foolishness to those who are perishing? To those who are, is it fearful? Yeah, I mean, the thought of dying, that can be a frightening thought. But when we know what's on the other side, when we know that we have a Jesus who's waiting to welcome us, it helps us. So our hope needs to be in Christ. So what are we fearing? What are we hoping in? Just want to thank you today for joining us. I want to thank you, Larry, father-in-law. He's watching us today from Illinois. I want to thank Lori Moran. She's here, and she is in New York. Dan Edwards, he's one of ours. He's right here locally. And Mike Smith, and we have Brianna visiting us from Florida. It's good to see that you're here today, and I want to wish you guys well and all that's going on. Laura Hodges Anderson, I call her Laura Hodges because that's how I knew her as one of my students, but Laura's watching us from Indiana. It's good that she's here with us. Brian Whalen, he's taking some time off. I know he's busy at work. He's one of those essentials, and he's watching us. And so thank you, Brian. Thank you, Pastor Brian, for being on. Will Tompkins, he is here. He and Patty, and they're in Arizona. Pastor Will actually leads our study, our Pilgrims Progress, and so we're so glad about what's going on there. And he also has a podcast that's available. If you want to watch it, you can talk to me. It's just a wonderful read, Pilgrim's Progress through this crisis. message me if you want that podcast. And then also my mother-in-law, Jeannie. She's on watching. So just there might be some that I've missed, and I've missed you, or you're watching this at a later time. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making this midweek a time just to stop and eat your lunch and hear an encouraging word from the Lord. And so we find forgiveness again in the cross, and we find freedom. And the ones that Jesus sets free are free indeed. And what a burden is lifted, when you feel like when you know that you're free because he set you free. So live in that freedom and carry each other's burdens, and come to the campfire tonight if you can at 7 p.m. And we're going to sing some songs, and then we'll see you again on Sunday. And some people will be, I want to encourage you to invite a friend or get a watch party going. And then also